There is a piece of music in the original Pokémon games that is genuinely, viscerally wrong. Not bad. Wrong. Wrong in a way that a 7-year-old can feel without being able to name it. And at some point in the late 2000s, the internet decided that this wrongness was not artistic but medical, that the music had literally made children sick. This is the story of Lavender Town Syndrome, and understanding why this particular legend attached to this particular track reveals something real about the anxiety that Pokémon itself created, an anxiety so persistent that it had to invent a disease to explain itself. Lavender Town first appeared in Pokémon Red and Green, released in Japan in February 1996. It is a small village in the eastern reaches of the Kanto region, and it is the only location in the game defined by death. Everywhere else in Pokémon, the world is about growth, collection, companionship. You catch creatures, you raise them, they evolve, you become stronger. Lavender Town is where this cycle stops. It houses the Pokémon Tower, a graveyard where trainers come to mourn their departed partners. The town's theme music is a sparse, high-pitched melody in an unusual meter over a slow, droning bass pedal. It sounds like nothing else in the game. And according to the legend that would come to be called Lavender Town Syndrome, this music was dangerous. The story goes like this. In the months following Pokémon Red and Green's release, children across Japan began experiencing severe headaches, nosebleeds, irritability, and in the most extreme versions, suicidal impulses. The cause was allegedly a high-frequency tone embedded in the Lavender Town theme, a tone at or above the threshold of adult hearing but audible and harmful to children's more sensitive ears. The original Japanese version of the track, the legend claims, was subsequently altered before the international release of Pokémon Blue to remove this dangerous frequency. The original version became a kind of forbidden object, a piece of media that had been suppressed because it worked too well, not as art, but as a weapon. There is no credible evidence that any of this occurred. No Japanese news reports from 1996 document a wave of illness linked to the game. No medical records. No official statements from Nintendo or Game Freak. The legend appears to have originated on anonymous internet forums, likely on 2channel, sometime around 2008 to 2010, over a decade after the game's release. It is, by any reasonable standard, a creepypasta, a piece of horror fiction presented as fact and spread through the credulous architecture of the early internet. But dismissing it as a hoax leaves something unexplained. Why did this specific legend attach to this specific piece of music? There are thousands of unsettling tracks in video games. There are dozens of creepypastas about haunted cartridges and cursed media. Most evaporate. Lavender Town Syndrome persists. It has been the subject of countless videos, analyses, fan recreations, and earnest debates about its factual basis, even now, years after it was first debunked. And it persists because it is not entirely wrong about the music. It is wrong about what the music is doing, and why. Here is the argument. Lavender Town Syndrome endures because the legend accurately identifies a real rupture in Pokémon's design philosophy, a moment where the game's soundtrack violates its own contract with the player, and then misattributes the resulting unease to acoustic hazard rather than artistic intent. The music is disturbing. The legend converts that disturbance into a safety narrative. This hurt children, therefore it was removed, therefore the original is dangerous knowledge. But the disturbance is real because it was composed to be real. The game's soundtrack is doing something deliberate at Lavender Town, and the creepypasta is a distorted map of that artistic decision. The first subclaim is that the Lavender Town theme is compositionally anomalous within the Pokémon soundtrack, and that this anomaly is intentional. The game establishes a musical language across its first several hours. Compare it to almost any other location theme. Pallet Town, the player's hometown, is a warm major key melody in 4/4 time with a flowing, lyrical phrase structure. Cerulean City has a bright, energetic feel with clear harmonic movement. Even the more subdued tracks, like the cycling theme or the Pokémon Center music, maintain a melodic coherence and a tonal center that tells the player's ear, "You are safe. The world is legible. Things make sense here." Lavender Town breaks all of these conventions. The melody sits in an unusually high register for the Game Boy sound chip, creating a thin, almost piercing quality. The harmony is dominated by a drone, a sustained bass tone that barely moves, giving the track a static, claustrophobic feeling rather than the forward motion of conventional harmonic progression. The melodic intervals are dissonant and angular, refusing the singable phrases that characterize every other town. And the meter has a lilting, uneven quality that prevents the listener from settling into any rhythmic comfort. The game builds a musical contract with the player, and Lavender Town is where that contract is broken. Junichi Masuda, the soundtrack's composer, has described his process in terms of matching music to the emotional tone of each location. The music of Lavender Town sounds the way it does because it is the music of a graveyard. It is supposed to unsettle you. And it does. The second subclaim is that the Lavender Town syndrome legend depends on a real cultural association between Pokémon and media-induced harm to children, an association created not by the games, but by the anime. On December 16, 1997, Episode 38 of the Pokémon anime, titled Den-O Senshi Porygon, broadcast a scene featuring rapidly flashing red and blue lights. The flashing triggered photosensitive epileptic seizures in approximately 685 viewers, mostly children, who were hospitalized. This was a real, documented, widely reported medical event. It created a cultural narrative in Japan and internationally. Pokémon can physically harm children through its media. This narrative was available in the culture. And when the Lavender Town syndrome legend emerged a decade later, it plugged directly into this existing socket. The pattern suggests something further. The legend even retrojects its timeline into early 1996, placing the supposed illnesses in the months after Red and Green's release, months before the Porygon incident. This retrojection is structurally revealing. It positions Lavender Town syndrome as the original harm, the first instance of Pokémon hurting children, predating the documented event. The legend does not reference the Porygon incident because it does not need to. It creates its own origin story. But the reason it can do this credibly is that the culture already knew Pokémon was capable of this. The Porygon incident made a Pokémon causes medical harm a thinkable sentence. The creepypasta simply changed the mechanism from flashing lights to sound waves. The third subclaim is that the legend anchors itself in a real, verifiable audio difference between the Japanese and international releases, and that this difference is what makes the legend resistant to simple debunking. The original Japanese Pokémon Red and Green did have slightly different audio mixing than the later Pokémon Blue and the international releases. The Game Boy's sound chip had 4 channels, and the balance between them was adjusted across versions. In the original Red and Green, the highest frequency channel, carrying the melody, is marginally more prominent than in later versions. This is a real, measurable difference. It is also mundane, the kind of mixing adjustment that happens in virtually every localization and revision. But the legend takes this ordinary production detail and invests it with pathological significance. The slightly louder high channel becomes the dangerous frequency. The mixing change becomes evidence of a cover-up. And because there is a real difference, debunkings that claim the music is identical across versions are technically incorrect, which allows the legend to survive. The grain of truth sustains the mountain of fiction. So what the evidence has shown at this point is that the Lavender Town theme is a genuine artistic rupture in the game's soundtrack, that the Porygon incident made Pokémon causing medical harm a culturally available narrative, and that the verifiable audio differences between versions give the legend a foothold in fact. Which means the legend persists not because people are gullible, but because it has something real to attach to. It misattributes the real disturbance, but it does not invent it from nothing. Now consider the most plausible reading that does not require this thesis. This reading argues that the Lavender Town Syndrome legend exists because it is a compelling piece of horror fiction that spread through internet culture at a moment when creepypastas were a dominant form. It requires no deep cultural anxiety to explain. People enjoy being scared by stories about cursed media, and this one happened to stick. This reading has merit. There were many similar legends: Polybius, the Cursed Majora's Mask cartridge, Mew under the truck, and most of them do not require cultural analysis to explain. They are games, stories, participatory folklore. But this reading struggles to account for two things simultaneously. First, the specificity of the medical claim. Most creepypastas involve hauntings, glitches, or supernatural events. Lavender Town Syndrome specifically claims acoustic harm, that a sound frequency physically injured children. This is a medical claim, not a ghost story, and it maps precisely onto the documented medical event of the Porygon incident. Second, the persistence of belief. Most creepypastas are enjoyed as fiction. Lavender Town Syndrome continues to generate earnest debate about whether it really happened, long after other legends of its era have been filed away as creative writing. Both of these features are better explained by the thesis that the legend is drawing on a real cultural anxiety and a real artistic disturbance, rather than simply being a story that got lucky. There is also a specific counterargument against the first subclaim. The music is unsettling because it is a graveyard theme, and graveyard themes are supposed to be sad. This is simply what scoring a moment of death looks like in a children's game. It does not represent a rupture. It represents competence. This is partially right, but it understates how thorough the rupture is. Other games for children have sad or spooky locations without generating legends about medical harm. What makes Lavender Town distinctive is that Pokémon, as a franchise, is built on a foundational promise of vitality. Every mechanic in the game is about life getting stronger. And Lavender Town is the one place where this promise is confronted with its opposite, not as an obstacle to overcome, but as a fact that cannot be changed. The music does not just set a mood. It sonically abandons the player in a way the rest of the game never does. That is the disturbance the legend is trying to explain. If this thesis is correct, then Lavender Town Syndrome is not merely a hoax to be debunked and discarded. It is a cultural document, a distorted record of a real artistic event and a real cultural anxiety. The legend registers, in inverted form, two truths: that the Lavender Town theme is doing something genuinely artistically powerful, and that the Pokémon franchise had already demonstrated it could cause real harm to children through its media. The creepypasta is wrong about the mechanism but right about the sensation. It converts aesthetic disturbance into medical danger because that is the vocabulary available when you need to say that this piece of children's media made you feel something you were not supposed to feel, and you lack the critical language for that experience. This suggests something about how we process unease in children's media more broadly. When art for children creates genuine discomfort, when it is honest about death, loss, fear, or wrongness, the surrounding culture often struggles to recognize it as art. Instead, it pathologizes the experience. The discomfort becomes evidence that something has gone wrong, that the media is dangerous, that children need protection not from the subject matter but from the medium itself. This is a loss, because the discomfort is often the point. Lavender Town is one of the most memorable locations in Pokémon precisely because it violates the game's own rules. It gives child players an experience of genuine sorrow and unease in a world that had promised them only growth. That is not a design failure. It is one of the most honest things the game does. The mental model here is straightforward. When a piece of children's media generates a haunted technology legend, a story that the media itself is physically dangerous, look for the real artistic rupture the legend is misattributing. The creepypasta is a distorted map, but it is a map of something actual. The question it opens is this: what other pieces of children's media have been called dangerous when they were simply being honest about something the culture preferred to deny? And what gets lost when we protect children from that honesty by converting it into a safety concern?